This is today's business leaders. Actionable advice from real-world professionals. And now here's your host, Gabe Arnold.
All right, today I have Calvin Wayman with me, and he has a really awesome and unique story, in my opinion. Most business, in my experience, take years to get right and to figure out, and through his kind of direct kind of facing fear, without any kind of reservations, is how he's gotten to that point. He probably did have some reservations we'll chat about, but his approach, just kind of like, kicking fear in the teeth, I think has moved him a lot faster than most people do. So we're going to chat about that. But welcome to the show, Calvin. We're glad to have you here.
Hey, pumped to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start out the way I always start out, and then you can kind of roll into telling us a little bit more about your story and where you are today. But when was the moment that you realized that you were an entrepreneur?
Man, that's a good question, because usually when I always wanted to be, and it's hard to find out exactly when I realized I wanted to be, but there's a specific moment when I realized I was actually going to do something about it. And that was my true calling. And it was a moment where, actually around this time of year, 3 years ago, I was going, every new year, what do? We make New Year's resolutions, right? But it's also a time to reflect and to see like what we have to show for the last year. And for several years in a row, I didn't have much to show for it, quite frankly. And so I just year after year kept passing. And then this time, 3 years ago, what I did is I projected myself 10 years in the future and basically put myself in my mind's eye as a 10-year older self, and was like, what if I actually don't do anything? Because I haven't done anything up to this point. I'm not getting less responsibility as the years go by. I'm getting more. What if I wake up in 10 years and nothing has changed? And I had all of these fears going into it, like, what if I start and I mess up? But when I asked that question, like, what if I wake up in 10 years and nothing has changed? Or even worse, what if this fire inside of me to do something actually died because I didn't act on it?
Yeah.
The feeling of that regret that was possible for me created such a big possible fear that it swallowed the smaller fears and made me just say, you know what, screw it, I'm going to do it. So I quit my day job, and that was kind of my first major step with realizing, yeah, I'm an entrepreneur, let's do this.
Very cool. When you quit your job, which I've had 2 jobs in my 20 years of being an entrepreneur, for a very short time, I'm completely unemployable, so I relate to that, but I quit both jobs. When you quit your job, did you have any money? Did you have anything lined up, or you're just like, fuck it, I'm going for it, and I'm going to figure it out?
Right. So I had a little bit of a teeny bit of cash, but I had I had a lot of debt. And so I wasn't positive at all. Mm-hmm. And then crazy stuff happened right after, too. Like right when I quit my job, I moved to California. It was pretty much just a screw it, I'm just going to do it and figure it out. Like, if I didn't make something work within 30 days, I would be screwed. And then on top of that, the IRS season came around, and for every single year of my life, I've gotten a tax return, like 100%. So I had the bright idea at the beginning of 2014 that I was just going to go tax exempt. So I wouldn't have to give them a refund. I just wouldn't have tax taken out. And then, so right after I quit my day job, I get a letter from the IRS. I'm like, cool, the refund this year is $4,500. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is a fucking bill. So I went from, I was like, oh, I'm surprised I'm getting
I've had those letters, so that's why I'm laughing.
Horrible. So yeah, I was like, oh, I remember that. It was, oh man, I'm so glad somebody else felt that too. Like, yeah. So that was a big punch in the gut. Like, so yeah, it was a very rocky time, as entrepreneurship is, as just being a business owner is, and yeah, just kept going after it anyway.
It's funny only because I've been there. So because I've gotten those letters in the mail, and there was a really bad time, like almost 15 years ago now, where I didn't file taxes for like 3 years because I had no money, and like I've gone through some bad stuff, and like, you know, finally, unfortunately, and thankfully on the other side of that, but there's nothing like getting the IRS letters, or you're fortunate to not have your accounts frozen, because that really sucks.
Glad I haven't had that yet. Hopefully we can keep that.
Yeah,
away.
That's why they say pay your taxes first.
Yes.
but you said something really interesting, which I've never heard anybody else say before, but it really resonates with me, and that is that you said you looked forward, 10 years, and your fear of being 10 years down the road and not having changed swallowed up your fear, whatever the fear of like quitting your job or starting it was.
Messing up, failing, 100%.
Yeah.
I'm the only one that I've ever heard say that too, quite frankly. I just barely I just talked in San Diego at this event. And it was an interesting thing, that moment, because I'm a big believer in positivity. Like, I think
for sure.
Positivity is what gets you going. And that's what I tried for a long time, was like just willing myself into positivity to get me to actually act. But the reason I talk about that now is it's just the truth. Like I wish I could say I just had this big, powerful vision, and that's what pulled me through. I think that would be the cool standard Tony Robbins answer.
Right.
But that wasn't it. The thing that literally got my ass in gear was swallowing my smaller fears with a bigger fear. The bigger fear of, what if you don't? And I think that was awesome looking back, because, and I still use it now, and I think it's awesome because you're using the powerful energy of fear.
Right.
But now you kind of can own it and like direct it instead of it just owning you.
Yeah. No, it's really cool because like 2 or 3 times, definitely twice, I'm writing a book this year about my kind of entrepreneurial story, so I'll get it.
Awesome. Is this your first book?
I've written a couple smaller books, but this is like my first own autobiography from where I'm at to here. So the cool thing is it's kind of taking me back, and like I'm remembering details of things that I kind of put out of my mind for a while. But one thing that I've always remembered, and this has happened at least twice, maybe 3 times, but one of the times was I moved to Chicago and was sleeping on my friend's couch, and I had $100 to my name, and I got up, I literally, like, we got in at like 2 or 3 in the morning with like my car and all I had. I sold my car the next day so I could have some more money. I was in Chicago, so you don't need a car really.
Right.
And so I had a little bit more, but I'm like, I gotta make a lot of money like really fast. So I started, meeting people, hustling people, talking to my friends there, and like in a matter of like a week, I had generated my first like $3,500.
Nice.
And it was the fear of like, being homeless that really drove me, because just a matter of like 8 months before that, I was on my way to being evicted out of somewhere and like really facing homelessness. And so I love those memories because that fear is so strong that in a moment where you're like, I don't want to make this phone call, or I don't want to fire that person, or I don't want to confront things that you're afraid of, or everybody's afraid of things all the time.
But you really should do.
Yeah, but you have to do because it's the right thing to do, and you're afraid. But you're like, I'm more afraid of being, homeless than I am of dealing with this small little problem. And so it's just really interesting to hear somebody else say that. So not to get off track.
Well, no, that's actually right on track, because you're a business owner, entrepreneur, and so you relate by having a similar experience. Once you just notice it, you're like, yeah. That's what's pushed me in times past too. Yeah.
So that's really cool. I've never heard anybody share that. But that's the other thing that reminds me of is I've a couple episodes ago I had a guy named James Schleicher on the show, and I heard him speak one time, and from behind the podium he pulled out this gray wig that made him look like an old man. And he's like, I wear this every morning, and I ask myself, what legacy am I leaving? So it reminded me of what you're talking about, of like,
totally
10 years in the future, am I going to hate myself for not doing anything? And it's such
exactly.
a great perspective
you're so right.
setter.
You're so right. I did exactly. That's exactly what it was, because I remember thinking I would rather try and fail. Like I would have more respect for myself and my legacy to be somebody that tried and failed than somebody that didn't even give it a shot because of practicality, because I had a wife and a 1-year-old and all of this debt, you know? So, yeah.
Yeah, so it's very cool. And I think that, like, I always tell people, like, successful people are successful because they've failed more times than you. It's like the faster you can accelerate your failure, the faster you'll learn. And like, and really the valuable parts of your life are your failures. Once you get that out of the way, then you're like, oh, I know how to do it right. And it's, overcoming that fear is huge. And so that's why I really just want to highlight that, is that realizing that use whatever tool motivates you, fear, hope, love, excitement, whatever, to move you past what you have to move past. And they're all kind of just mind tricks in a sense.
And here's something else I think is important to put here for somebody that is looking to get started. Because looking on this, I can see how people might be like, oh, I could never do that, or I don't have that much courage or whatever. It's actually very, very practical if you think about it. Because what I did, and you talked about at the very beginning, like having success as fast as I've had success.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why is I feel like what I did really compressed time frames because of this very practical tip. And this is what I'm doing. I put myself in a position where I had to succeed.
Yeah.
Now, what type of success do you want? Like, whatever that is for you, nobody can decide. You decide it. But if you are courageous enough to just do that, to put yourself in a position where you have to, that the only option is either I am fucking done or I'm going to run through the brick wall and make it happen.
Right.
Then you're more likely to do it. When you can burn those boats to take the island and be like, that's your only option. That's why I did it. It's very practical. Like, I did it because I wanted to have the success more than I wanted the comfort of, like, slow growth. I was like, if I don't put myself in this position, I don't know if I ever will take off. And so when I committed to getting rid of my day job and moving from Utah to Southern California to build my own business, that's kind of what I was doing, putting myself in a position that was very stressful, like times that were so anxious I wouldn't wish them on my worst enemy.
Yeah.
Like, that is just the truth. At the same time, it's what pushed me to break through to do that thing. So that's what I would just say is, what could you do to put yourself in a position where success is the only option?
Yeah, no, that's great advice. So you quit your job with a 1-year-old, you said, which is craziness, because of all the times in a guy's life, being a father is probably the most awe-inspiring and scary.
Yep.
So you quit your job, and then what happened? Bring us up to date from 2.5, 3 years ago to where we are today.
Well, what ended up happening is I did door-to-door sales because, again, this might also sound like I'm just a glutton for punishment, but the reason I did is I had the same problem that many entrepreneurs have. It isn't talked about enough. I didn't know what my passion was.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I didn't know what it was. And so I looked around, but the clock was ticking, and I needed to make some money. And so at the same time, I promised myself I would not get a job just for money. I would not do something just because I had to. I would not do it based of fear.
Mm-hmm.
I would do it that if I had all the money in the world, it would still make sense for me to do it. And so I did door-to-door because I realized if I was stepping into this entrepreneurial game, I should really develop the ability to handle rejection.
Yeah.
And so I did door-to-door sales. And to just kind of fast forward, went from doing door-to-door to getting around a lot of the right kinds of people, being around entrepreneurs for the first time. I ended up starting a social media agency. And over the past year, I really just been focused on growing the agency and now getting into speaking. I have a book and promoting that way, and now I still do the agency and have like online courses and stuff like that, and I'm doing a little bit of speaking.
Very cool. Well, you have something in common with Mark Cuban and Warren Buffett.
The door-to-door thing?
Yeah. Every single massively successful billionaire that I've ever read about has some really early stage period of their life, which, they were entrepreneurs from a very young age, where they went door to door. Like Mark Cuban, I think, sold garbage bags door to door.
Yeah,
which is ludicrous.
So funny. That is so funny.
And Warren Buffett sold 5 packs of gum. And there's a story in this book I'm reading, The Snowball, about him. that somebody wanted to buy one stick, and he sat there and figured it out in his head at 5 years old, and he's like, sorry, I'm not going to do that. It's not high enough profit for me. So
that's so funny. I love that.
And I think your mindset, which is brave, but I think, again, you probably drove through the fear of it by thinking, what we talked about a minute ago, about like thinking ahead of where you don't want to be. The mindset of saying, I want to get good at handling rejection is brilliant.
Yeah, it's practical. Because if you're doing anything else, if you want to be an entrepreneur, whether you're selling your own stuff, you want to know what that's really done. Because a lot of people, people don't talk about, would never consider this to me now, but I used to be very introverted because I was homeschooled my entire life.
So was I.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No way. Well,
I get it.
Again. Like, so people, I was actually very shy, very awkward, especially in my early 20s. And now, when I get up and speak on stage, nobody would ever think that I was an introvert. But the thing that helped that was the door-to-door stuff.
Yeah.
Like having people slam the door in your face, like as tough as that was, every single day for, like somebody told me that I should do it for 4 months because a 4-month of door-to-door was worth a 4-year business degree. I did it for 14 months. So I did it for every day for 14 months. And doing that has made public speaking a breeze.
Yeah.
Like I still get a little bit nervous right before, but when you're on stage of people that actually want to hear your pitch, so to speak, or your whatever you have to say, that feels way better than everybody just saying, screw you, slam the door, I'm going to call the cops, I'm going to have the dogs after you. Like if you're afraid of public speaking, go knock on some doors for a few weeks, and I think you'll
be good to go. Yeah.
You'll be really happy.
No kidding.
To get in front of.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's crazy. I was homeschooled all the way through, even with that, barely graduated with my mom's help and ever-bearing patience, but not very academic, and definitely naturally super introverted. But in my teens, I learned if I want to get anywhere and make any money, I got to be able to stand up and hustle and pitch.
That's what it gave me. It gave me the entrepreneurial, like, I need to figure it out. I'm not going to be just put in some system. If I want to create something, it's going to be me creating it. Yeah. That's
crazy, man. I've never, ever heard anybody choose to go do that just purely for the lesson.
Yeah. Well, it's made a lot of money beyond that. So.
Yeah, that's very cool. So you start there, you get a very hard knocks education, which obviously will pay you for the rest of your life. And then you moved into doing your agency and your courses and your speaking and your book, which is awesome. And you did that all in you said like 2 or 3 years, right?
Yes. So it hasn't been quite yet 3 years that I quit my day job.
Okay. And comparatively, like you quit your day job, and I looked at some things on your site and watched your video. You mentioned now, like in one speaking event, you make more than you did in a week or a month. What's
2 months.
In 2 months, jeez.
At a day. Yeah.
So what's that been like? Like how you have to kind of you kind of have to have the grit to figure it out and get there. And then one day you woke up and you realized that you were there. So now
honestly, it's the opposite. My mindset, I'm not there. This has been an interesting thing because people have talked to me about it. I have not arrived by a long shot. Mm-hmm. Like I look at people that are so far ahead, whether it's somebody that has the popularity of a Ty Lopez or a YouTube star like the Paul brothers, or somebody that's way more influential in entrepreneurship like Gary Vaynerchuk. Mm-hmm. Like they are so they humble me pretty damn fast for how far ahead. But one thing that I've shifted into lately is I'm not just chasing anymore. I'm just like I'm in the game and loving the game more than the result. Mm-hmm. Like the game of entrepreneurship, the game of building. And there's like these opposites. Like I want to dominate and do what I can to win at business and to win at this thing, but at the same time, if it doesn't happen, I'm good.
Right.
Like it's a very interesting balance and interesting dynamic. Like I want to make as fucking much money as I can,
mm-hmm.
and if I make zero, awesome.
Who cares? Yep. Yeah, I always tell my girlfriend, who's my business partner, I'm like, if everything in our life burned to the ground tomorrow, no big deal.
Exactly.
I mean, I know how I got here. I mean, do I want that? Of course not. But it's like, would that scare me?
No, because
I'd probably be upset for a day, and then I'd just start over.
nothing's permanent. And this is what I found: the win is not the result. If wins were only in the result, LeBron James wouldn't be LeBron James. Like, people that we look at as like that, somebody that is so successful because of the result, it's because they won in the day to day going after it. Like, the win for me was quitting my day job.
Right.
Not the day I made my first 10 grand in a day.
Right.
Like, the win was, I am going after this thing. And so if you're going after it, if you're in the game and you can figure out a way to enjoy the game more than the wins or the losses at the end of the game, dude, nobody can touch you.
Yeah,
Like,
for sure.
Yeah.
So, and I think maybe I didn't ask it clearly, but when you go from normal 9 to 5, you quit your job, you make no money, you get a huge IRS bill, so you're broke or pretty damn close, and then you go to having a $10,000 day, and like you've definitely reached a level of success that a lot of people haven't. And I know, and I agree with you. Like, there's always gonna be somebody bigger, and like you can look at somebody bigger, and like they're miles beyond you, and that's all. It's always gonna be that way. But how do you've achieved a level of success now? Now, what do you think about at the next level? What's the next level of the game for you? Like, what are you looking for next? Because I think if you're like me, and maybe it's just me, but like I can hit a goal. Like, I think we're going to have a record month this month on our side in the business, which is great. And then I'm going to want something bigger, and I'll start to kind of grow my vision. For you, have you experienced any of that yet? Or are you just kind of enjoying the level that you're at right now?
I'm not enjoying the level at all.
Okay.
Like, and I don't mean that in an ungrateful way. Like,
right.
I'm more grateful. I'm grateful that I actually have the freedom to do this. But one of the goals that I set has not even been hit yet, and so I'm chasing it, and not for the sake of the chase or the money, but because of the people. Like, I get help along the way, and not just the people that I get help on the way, but I'm training myself to enjoy the journey. So when I first got started, one of the big things for me was to become a millionaire. I'm not there. And I even have a YouTube show called Millionaire Case Study. And so what it is it's the world's first story following a regular dude go from zero to his first million as it's happening.
Nice.
And when I started that show, I was at the bottom. Now, last year I'm all for transparency and everything, but just so people know exactly where I am, I went from, in my day job, making like 40, 50, 60 grand, nothing too crazy.
Right.
Now starting my business last year, I did between 140, 150 grand. That's an improvement.
Right.
Nice improvement, hitting 6 figures for the first time. But it's a long shot from my goal, which is to make $1 million in revenue for the year.
Right.
So that game is still on. Now, again, there might be some people listening to this that were like, I was with you until you started talking about money. It's not all about money. Hey, I get it. And that's one of the things that I get to learn too, and have learned in many ways, is like, one of my goals was to be $1 million by the time I was 30. And I turned 30 on November 1st of last year. I was not a millionaire. And in some ways, that has been one of the greatest gifts, because like the first couple of years going after this has just been like pretty stressful type of a thing, like chasing it. But now that it's not there, it's like, awesome, I didn't hit it. Now I can, again, that's where I learned the lesson of, it's not just about the result at the end of the game. It's like what you're doing when you're playing it. Yeah, even if you did get it, then what? You still wake up the next morning, you needed to be doing something. Yeah. So it's all about, like you mentioned the word before, legacy. And like something that I decided to do since that point is I now have online courses and masterminds that's incorporating more of a community. So it's not just me making money, it's helping other people get to where it is that they want to go. And so that's kind of what fires me up right now, is like taking what I've learned and instilling it to larger groups of people, whether that's on stage or with my online courses, to just continue being a force for good in the world, so that I can be happy with myself today, tomorrow, when I'm 85, when I'm 105, when I'm 125,
Yeah.
I want to be happy with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, in my early 20s, had a multi-million-dollar construction company that I lost in the housing market crash, and it was so fast to grow there that then I lost it because I didn't have the maturity or financial controls to keep it. And then you start over again, and you realize that absolutely, I think we should all aim for huge numbers. And one of my goals is by the time I'm 60, I'll do over $1 billion in revenue every year.
Love it.
So I took that and worked it all the way back to what I have to do every single day to get there. And the reason that people will, kind of say, oh, it's not about money, or they'll start to downplay big goals like that is because they're afraid.
Sure.
And they don't understand what money actually is.
Yeah.
Money is just extra time and resources for everybody, including you. And it's like the more we get to, the more we make, the more bigger impact we have. The more time we can work on the things we want. The less we have to worry about mowing the lawn or doing things that just don't have any valuable impact, comparatively.
One of my friends said something literally last night on Facebook about money that I thought was so awesome. He said something like, money, like so many times we think of this separate things, like money is not outside of you. Money is simply an exchange of value.
Yeah.
And you are the value. So if you're making a lot of money, it means that you're giving a lot of value. And he said, so in that sense, you are money.
Yeah.
You're so money and you didn't even know it. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
It reminds me of, I read this book called The Big Leap, which is kind of out there, like, mentality book, which is really cool. But one thing he said in there, he brought up that Einstein talked about, is that time comes from inside of us, not from outside of us. And the second you own your time and realize that you have all the time in the world, then you can stop stressing about that. And it's the exact same thing with money that you just said. It's like the more value you provide, the more people you serve, the more money you're going to make.
Yeah,
and obviously there's a back end to that, and you need to be intelligent and logical and price things right. And there's it's a skill set too, but it's definitely about, if you serve more people, then everything else takes care of itself. So that's definitely really interesting. So tell me, we've kind of touched on some of it, but if you were to sit down with somebody that was thinking about quitting their job, and wants to get from, making, I unfortunately, I think that making less than 50,000 is like basically being, under the poverty line these days. It's not,
sure.
It's difficult to do okay at that rate for a household, I think. So you go from that, where you're doing okay, you're not doing that well, and you go to making six figures and beyond. What have been like the core principles that you've figured out along the way? We talked about a couple of them, but maybe just kind of map those out for people.
So a big one, and I think this is what's helped it feel fast, because here's the truth. In the day-to-day and in the moment, it doesn't feel freaking fast.
Yeah.
Like, it's insane. Like, when I put my head up and realize it hasn't even been 3 years yet. Holy crap, that's awesome. What am I going to do in 3 more,
Right.
And how I get there is, first of all, whoever I'm talking to, I want to kind of reverse engineer like what they're trying to get to. Like, what do they actually want? Like in honesty, I want to know what you really want, and it would be really cool to know what do you actually believe you can do. Like, somebody can say, oh, I want to be a billionaire in the next 2 years. Do you know what you're really fucking saying? Now, if you do, great. I'm not going to downplay that. I want to know honesty. Honesty, what do you want? And so then, from that place of honesty, this is all you need to know. Like, this is it. Most people, what cripples most people is they get an idea of what they want, and then they don't know exactly how they're going to get it. And so they spend all of their time and energy and focus trying to figure out the how, and they're paralyzed. And if they looked up, they would realize they actually haven't even entered the game. They're just on the sidelines trying to figure out how. So this is what I would say. Based on what you want, where are you right now this moment? And what is the next step? That's it. Now, this is the scary part. Most people don't want to take that next step because it's kind of in the dark and they don't know what they're going to do after that. Do this. Like, that was me with quitting my day job. I knew I did not want to be an employee. Then what the F was I being an employee for?
Yeah.
Like, like I didn't know but I didn't know what I was going to do. What was going to be my passion? What was I going to do? I knew I didn't want to be I didn't want to be an employee. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. Awesome. Next step, quit my day job. Now
Yep.
I'm in it's like moving on a board game. Then it's like, well, frick. Now where am I? Well, I still want to be an entrepreneur. I need to figure something out. So what I want to do next, door to door. Like it's the next step. And if you do that continually, then it's crazy to see where you'll go. In fact, I've just been in that the last few months. Like we talked about legacy a little bit. I wanted to have more of a legacy and impact more people and create more of a community and get around better people. So I was like, what's the next step to help me with that? You know what? Podcasting is going to be a good step in that direction.
Yeah.
And so I literally just said, I'm starting a podcast, and now I'm in it. Like in the podcast game, building my own podcast for that reason. And I'm going to get it going, and I'm not going to stop until it gets up and going and is where I want it to be. And then from there, then I'll probably pick my head up again and say, okay, what's the next step again? So that's the most important thing, I think, is to not get so crippled thinking you need everything laid out, A through Z. You only need 3 letters of A through Z. You need A, B, and Z. Z is where you want to end up. A is where you are now. And B is your next step. If you just do that and you trust yourself enough to just keep taking the next step, literally, that simple, you'll make it. You can't not.
That's great advice. Yeah, I think you're completely right. Everybody wants to know. They want certainty, which you have nowhere in life anyway, at your job or anything else. But we think we need certainty. We want that to, be happy with the next step. And you're right. If you just take the next step, then you can focus all your energy into that, and then you'll be like, okay, now what? And you can keep going. And definitely being around good people is huge. I mean,
Totally.
I've done that. With in-person, real live mentors, with people virtually, with podcasting and with books, the things that I read are probably the books that I buy, like real books and, audio books on Audible. That's probably the best money that I've ever spent in my life, because it's those, you're kind of hanging out with somebody that's way farther down the road than you. And I usually only learn literally like 1 or 2 things out of a huge book, but that experience and kind of listening to that stuff really, really helps mindset and helps you kind of step up to the next level.
It's so huge. If that's another thing that's a good step, depending on where you are. If you're in a rural area and you're trying to get around cool people and you know what to do. We live in 2018, man, and it is so cool to get around people with your cell phone. I'm an audiobook guy.
Yep.
Getting in their head, or like what people are doing now, listening to a podcast. Do that, surround yourself with it. That's a great step in mindset to get moving in the right direction.
So what happens when you take the next step and then everything falls apart on you? Has that happened to you yet? Or what would be your advice, or what are your thoughts about when that happens?
It happens all the time. So what do you do then? What you do then is you just have a new A point. Like, where do you want to go? Where are you now? And what's the next step? Like, literally that. This has been quite physical in so many things. Like, one of the things that I did kind of as a mental exercise, again, you're going to start noticing a theme of me just putting myself through pain.
Of insanity.
to stretch my mindset of what was possible, a little over a year ago, I ran in a 50-mile ultra marathon. That's 2 marathons in a row. And I had never run a marathon before. So why did I do that? Because I wanted to stretch what I thought was physically possible when something was so shocking. I was like, because at first I was like, oh, there's no effing way. Nobody has ever done that before. But then I realized a lot of people do. I'm like, holy crap, maybe I am more capable than I give myself credit for. So then I signed up for one and ran one. But then in the middle of the race, I collapsed. And so that was nothing that I planned. It was kind of a step back. And I no longer could even visualize the finish line. Like before, I was like, holy crap, I'm visualizing the finish line. I'm going to run 50 miles. But when I was in the middle of the race and collapsed, that was like a step back. And I was like, I don't know if I can even honestly believe myself crossing the finish line. But am I completely done? Not really. I bet I could go to that tree. And so I did. And I went to that tree. And then went to the next tree. And I'm starting to feel a little bit better for some reason. That's weird, because I've already been halfway in. I'm going to see if I can get to the next checkpoint. And then suddenly magic happened. After mile 28 or something, and it was like I got a fresh body, a fresh set of legs that I as like I had never run at all that day, and I ran faster and harder than I'd ever been in my entire life, clear up to like mile 40. And I wouldn't have experienced that had I stopped because of the setback, because that there's no way I could get the goal. So I just readjusted and was like, yeah, I don't know if I can visualize the finish line, but I know I'm not done right now in this moment. I know I can go to the tree. So I did that, and then momentum hit, and then 15 hours later, I crossed the 50. So
One of my friends has like 5 rings on his leg for all the ultras that he's finished. That's insane, dude.
Good for him. Good for him. I've only had enough to do one so far. I'm like, I learned the lesson, I think. So we'll see if I do another one in the upcoming months or years.
So in that moment, I think most normal people would just have been like, well, I tried, and that's it. But you got up and you decided, well, I'm just going to try to get another 10, 15, 100 feet, whatever it was. What do you attribute that mental toughness to? That's an incredible amount of stamina to be like, I don't care how much pain I'm in or what's going on, and just to beat that. I mean, that's unreal. I mean, for most people.
It's probably a combination of things. A combination of me practicing, because who I am now, you wouldn't recognize me 4 years ago, because I was an idea guy, not an action taker. And for me to like literally listen to what feels like the right step to take or the right action and actually doing it, it's got a little bit tougher. And door to door certainly helped with that. But then just realizing that I wasn't done. Like, when people think that they can't go any further, I think they're thinking of the finish line in so many ways, like whether that's starting the business, literally crossing the finish line, creating a product. For me, I knew it wasn't just I didn't think I could cross the finish line. Like, I had a conviction that I could not cross the finish line. Like, I was like, if I have to do double this distance, that's not happening. But am I completely done? No. So I kept going. And then the other thing that made me keep going was the same realization I had when I projected myself 10 years in the future when I quit my day job. I did not want to have the regret of knowing I stopped before I was done.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, I'm already this far, so I'm just going to keep going. Maybe it's in 3 more miles. I literally can't move anymore. I'm going to keep going from tree to tree. And it did the opposite, interestingly, where it kicked into this reserve of magical feeling energy that I've never experienced in my entire life. And that was kind of a cool thing that I would have completely missed out on had I just said, and I could have quit and been totally proud of myself too, by the way.
Yeah.
That was the other side, is I totally could have said,
you ran a marathon.
I ran a marathon, the furthest distance I've ever been in my entire life, And so I think it was a combination of things, but not wanting to feel the regret and then realizing I'm not completely done, so I'm going to just keep going until I am.
Yeah. You talk about like reaching like this magical state after deciding to not give up and just push a little bit farther. I was watching the world championship of Spartan race the other day. And they talk about getting to the pain cave. And they're like, when you get to the pain cave.
The pain cave, that's what they call it? There's a name for it?
Yep.
Awesome.
And they're like, everything, like, you just get to this point where it hurts really, really bad, and then it like kind of washes away, and you're like in this weird euphoric state. And it's the weirdest thing to think that would be possible.
So interesting, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was awesome.
So that's crazy. And yeah, I think that's good advice of like not trying to figure out how to hit the ultimate, mile marker, the ultimate goal or the finish line, but just saying like, well, what's next? So just kind of coming back to your core belief of like, this is the new point A, what's the next step? And
right.
If you stick with that, then I think you can talk yourself into surviving whatever you're feeling or surviving the rejection.
You can also break down things that feel so big into something so doable.
Yeah.
It goes from this big mountain to literally a domino.
Yeah.
You can just flick over that domino. It's literally that easy. Then momentum can come from it. So.
Very cool. In all your kind of, speaking that you've done so far, and all the folks that you've talked to that have been like, hey, how do I get to where you are? what do you think are common things that people are afraid of? Like, what are you hearing, or what are people like, oh, I couldn't do that because of this, or what do you think are really common things?
Just fear in general, fear of failure, fear of being judged by other people if they did fail, and not realizing that they freaking can do it. Like, I had that even when I was in it. Like, I didn't think I could. Like, I thought there was something inferior from me compared to like a Ty Lopez or Gary Vaynerchuk or Lewis Howes, John Lee Dumas, these other people that I kind of look to. But being in the game and being around it, I realized they're all just freaking human beings. And that's refreshing because I'm also a human being. So that kind of makes us the same. So I don't think people realize that at first. Like, even at events, and it's weird because now the tables are turned, because people have come up to me now, like just at this event I was at, and they're talking to me now like an expert. And it's just so weird because so fresh. It was so fresh where I was doing that same thing. And so I'm like, dude, I get it. Listen, I know you saw me on stage, but literally I am you. Like, I'm a regular dude. I wanted to chase it. And like, just getting people to realize, holy shit, I can do it too.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, all these people are regular people. There's nothing different between me and you. Like, getting them to see that and understand that, I think, is huge. Otherwise, not knowing that can really hold you back.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. So what you mentioned earlier on, like, you speak a lot. What have you been speaking about? And then tell me, I don't know if that ties into, you mentioned you're working on a book, or you have a book out now?
I have a book. Book is Fish Out of Water, Achieving Breakthrough and Permanently Transforming into the New You. So, yeah, doing that, been speaking on either this or fear in general. In fact, that video right before the show you were talking about, a video I have up on my front website. So we created that at first for a speaker intro for a talk I give on fear. So I talk about fear, how to deal with fear, and then, of course, since I have a social media agency, talk about social media and how to stand out and stuff like that. So that's what I've been speaking on.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, this has been incredibly valuable, and I love your story.
Yeah, this has been fun.
I love the kind of kick in the fear in the face approach that you have, and it's awesome to hear how aggressively you've kind of gone after your goals and the results that you're getting. So, if people want to work with you or have you come speak with them, what's the easiest way to get a hold of you?
The best way is to find me at calvinwayman.com. Or if they want to shoot me an email, I'll just give my personal email here, calvinwayman@gmail.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on, Calvin, and we'll definitely have you back on soon so you can give us an update on everything, okay?
Sounds good. Appreciate it, brother. Peace out. Good day.
Cheers.
You've been listening to Today's Business Leaders with Gabe Arnold. Remember to subscribe on iTunes. For more information, visit todaysbusinessleaders.com.